Monday fun day. Opening up the comments. I'm gonna wait for some people to say hi to me because that's how I know you guys are in here and you can hear me. Sorry, my friend's actually going through like a legal issue that I'm trying to help with, but is anybody in here? It's the right time, right? Say hi if you're in here. I know the Wi-Fi is a little choppy and it's like a wind outside. So. Hi. Okay, perfect. There we go. They're all coming in now. Welcome. I'm actually really excited about today's topic. I guess because it's sex work and I'm a sex worker. I want to hear your guys' opinions because the people that join my Twitch streams are so fucking smart and I love just like dissecting different issues with you guys. So hello. Okay, good. Yep, we got Hazard Stint, Puerto Rican Pop, new names. Really excited. So, but just so you guys know, for those of you that are new, today is what we call Monday Fun Day. Am I late for the legal advice stream? This is not a legal advice stream, but we are going to talk about legalizing sex work and other kind of issues that pertain to the law. But what I do want to say for those of you that are new here, what Monday Fun Day consists of is first, we come on here, we do like an hour and a half, and then we go to my OnlyFans where we have a freaky geeky live, which is much different than this live. I had somebody on OnlyFans message me like, hey, I've gone to your Twitch streams, but I've never been to the lives on your OnlyFans. How are they different? I'm like, they're very different. But yeah, if you know, you know. If you don't know, you should know. They're very fun, as a lot of people in here can attest to. So, yep, you guys know the deal. We go here, and then we go straight over there once this is over. Hey, I created a Twitch just to thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that there's a girl because I feel like it's so, not that there's anything wrong with it being so male dominated, but I would love to have women in here, especially for this topic. But yeah, we're going to go live here and then we're going to go live on OnlyFans, which you guys, yeah, I know, I remember. If you guys don't know, if you guys want to find my OnlyFans, just go to jasminejafar.com or jasminejafar.me and it'll be the link will be over there. So yes, but today I want to talk about the feminist debate surrounding sex work. So I'm a sex worker. Angelica is also a sex worker. You guys should follow her on OnlyFans if you don't. She's really hot and she's really sweet. And like, I don't follow that many people on OnlyFans and I follow her. So anyways, back to the topic today. I watched your tape. It was hella good. All right. We love a good plug, but that's for the next live, guys. We can talk about all that on the next live. Today, we're talking about the feminist debate surrounding sex work. So, there is a split in feminist culture, and even the word feminism is so loaded. Like it's hard. I wouldn't know. Like if someone's like, "Do you identify as a feminist?" I don't even know what that word really means anymore because there's so many different interpretations of feminism. So many people that can identify as feminists that believe completely different things. It's kind of like the word woke. I think Hazard Stint was talking about this the other day, that it has just been overtaken by rhetoric from all sides. I think feminism is also similar in that way. But there's this debate among women or people who fight for gender equality and the for women to basically fight the patriarchy surrounding sex work. And a lot of this debate is centered around legalize, tax, regulate. So we're going to talk about that. I actually, after this, I'm going to tell you my opinion. You're probably going to know it, but there is legalization, decriminalization, and abolish. And a lot of this debate is surrounding in-person prostitution, exchanging sex for money in person, which is illegal in a lot of parts of the world, including in America, except for parts of Nevada. But sex work, as we know, is a spectrum, and there are a lot of different kinds of sex work. And like the kind I do and Angelica does is legal, which is OnlyFans. And a lot of this debate is not going to be surrounding that because that's kind of not where the debate is. However, there are parts of it and about sex work in general that the anti-sex work feminists do talk about, and then the pro-sex work feminists also talk about that do also apply to OnlyFans. But when we're talking about legalizing or decriminalizing, obviously that doesn't apply to OnlyFans or porn even, because it is legal. And that's kind of an argument too. It's like, okay, well, if we put a camera in front of you, it's legal, but if you're out on the street doing it, it's illegal. It's kind of like doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. But I also do want to say that I'm a sex worker, but I'm a sex worker in the capacity of like camming and OnlyFans. And I am going to bring my experience into this, but I do want to make clear that I am an anomaly and I am very privileged. And even being on OnlyFans is a very privileged form of sex work that a lot of sex workers don't have, which is, safety. It's much safer than other forms of sex work, less room for exploitation because like I choose what kind of content I want to put out. Nobody else determines that. I just am able to do what I'm comfortable with. I make all the profit. I mean, OnlyFans takes 20% from me using their platform, but it's very different than a lot of the issues that people face, when they're in-person sex work or escorting or anything like that. Also, my background, I'm privileged, I'm educated, I'm a lawyer. I don't come from a background that a lot of other sex workers come from. And I do want to acknowledge that, but at the same time, also not pretend, because I think a lot of the debate people have around sex work makes it seem like all sex workers are like just, you guys know the stereotypes, right? They have no other options. They don't want to be doing it. They're very poor. They've been abused. They have a history of abuse. Now, this is true for a lot of sex workers. And I would say the amount of sex workers, especially people who provide in-person services, the rates of those things occurring in that community are actually very high, but that doesn't mean that it applies to everybody. And I feel like a lot of times the sex work debate is so focused on that it kind of ignores other forms of sex work or other kinds of sex workers like me and a lot of other people I know that did choose this, that didn't come from those kind of backgrounds. And it's like very hard for some people to understand like that there are women that choose this. Even people who do in-person escorting and in-person services, like there's this idea that goes around, nobody would choose this if they have other options. And I'm an example, and I know plenty of other women are examples, and they've spoken out about too, that is not the case. There are women that choose to do this work. It is not the case that all women wish they could be doing something else. And even that in general, like wishing you could do something else, like if you were to go survey cashiers, janitor, a bunch of other jobs, and you were like, would you rather be a rock star? Like, a lot of people would say yes. Just because you would rather be doing something else doesn't mean that you are forced into sex work or you hate being into sex work. It's just a different standard that we place on sex work and as a whole than we put on any other job, which I've talked about before. I'm going to look at these comments really fast. Quick question, a soft topic, but when you go to work, do people recognize you like your clients? And if so, have they ever tried to fuck you? I don't work at a firm anymore, so don't deal with this. The laws of sex work are very peculiar at times. The laws against it are sadly rooted in the U.S.'s puritanical culture of yesteryear. I agree. So the U.S. takes it's illegal except for in Nevada, but we're going to talk about some of the problems with legalization versus decriminalization. And I didn't really know. I knew the difference, but I didn't know about some of the problems that legalizing sex work has created as opposed to decriminalizing. So we're going to talk about 3 different models. So there's the model of making it completely illegal. There is the model of decriminalizing it, which means that it's not legal, it's not regulated, but you will not get in trouble. There's also, that's what New Zealand has done. There is the Nordic model. The Nordic model is decriminalizing this person who is selling sex, but criminalizing someone who is buying sex, which I think is terrible, has terrible consequences. I think it's so fucking stupid, which I'm going to be straight up about. But the argument is that we don't actually want to penalize the women, but we want to penalize the people who are purchasing sex because there's something wrong with purchasing sex. And we kind of want to get rid of prostitution, but we don't want to blame the women because they're the victims, but people who are buying it are doing something wrong, inherently wrong, and they should be the ones getting in trouble, which makes everything worse for everybody. I feel like one of the problems with this is the problem that the U.S. has a lot. If they can't tax it and make their own money off it, then they don't want it. Yeah, well, I mean, we could just jump into that part. So I took some notes about, so Nevada, if you guys know, there are parts of Nevada where it is legalized. And I used to think like, oh, that's great. But I didn't realize that it actually causes a lot of problems. And so now, even though it's legal in certain parts of Nevada, sex workers are arrested all the time in Nevada, more so than any other place, because they didn't go through the proper channels. So you need to get a license. You need to register with the sheriff. You need to, like, there's so much that goes into it. And a lot of sex workers aren't comfortable with that. Like, they don't want to go register with the sheriff. They don't want to pay a bunch of money to get a license. They have to do STD that's available to the public. They kind of lose a lot of their privacy rights. They have to, like, kind of put themselves on a list that I am a sex worker. And as I was listening to an interview of a person talking about these issues, and she's like, I understand why sex workers don't want to do that. We've burned a lot of witches. And I get that. And the legalization kind of creates, only lets sex workers who are licensed report crimes. So it creates like a two-tiered system where it's like, okay, if you go get the license, if you go register with the sheriff, if you go do all of these things that a lot of sex workers aren't comfortable with, you're safe. But the sex workers that aren't doing these things, they are subject to more arrests. It creates this system. And I don't like that. I think the New Zealand model of decriminalization has worked out better, because in Nevada, more sex workers are actually being arrested since this has come into effect. That's confusing as hell. Yeah, they're making it very hard to be a sex worker, and they're taking away a lot of the privacy of sex workers, having to register as a sex worker, like, having to pay a lot of money to get a license, having to have like a manager at like, if you go work at a brothel, you have to register. And then like some crimes you have to, like, instead of it being like a serious crime, now it's just workplace harassment, etc., which makes it very tricky and sometimes makes a more serious crime a lesser crime, because now it's just, oh, that's your manager, instead of like, no, this is somebody who hurt me in this way. So in some states, if I can find some discarded sex on the street, I can turn around and sell it for a profit. That sounded like a scarlet letter type of situation with having to show your business to everyone if you choose to work as a sex worker, and that's not cool. I agree. In Amsterdam, in the red light district, at least from what I understand, they have a union. They get tested regularly through their job, but they have to have all their credentials for anyone who wants to use them to see. Okay, this is not a place to ask me to DM you back on Instagram. But that is what that, so after learning about what sex workers are saying in Nevada and how these laws are being applied in Nevada, I feel like legalizing it is not the best option. Does create this two-tiered system, where the sex workers who don't go through all this and don't put themselves on this, don't put themselves on this list with the sheriff, end up becoming way worse off than before. Whereas in New Zealand, it is decriminalized. And since they've put that into effect, we have seen great, great benefits. Prostitutes are killed less. They're abused less because they're able to go report these crimes. That's another issue in Nevada. It's like, if you're licensed, then what you're doing isn't illegal and you can go report if somebody hurts you. But if you aren't licensed, then it's a crime. And it's yucky to me. It's improved relations between the police and the prostitutes in New Zealand. Reporting better. Okay. Less of HIV, more ability to walk around with a condom. This is something I didn't know, but in some states, even in America, walking around with a condom is used as evidence of you being a prostitute and soliciting people for sex. So how crazy is that? That like people just trying to be safe, that could be used as evidence against you. In New Zealand, obviously this isn't the case. So they have less cases of HIV that they're seeing and other STDs. So basically, and prostitutes are saying this is much better. It's just made it overall better. So the New Zealand model is kind of held up as an example for a lot of other countries. Like, and you see a lot of sex workers and you see a lot of sex work advocates say like, this is what we want. This has been shown to work in New Zealand. So why isn't it being implemented in other places? A lot of human rights organizations, including World Health Organization, Human Rights Watch, ACLU, the big AIDS, like they all advocate for the decriminalization New Zealand model. Now the Nordic model, which is in Sweden, couple other countries, a couple of Nordic countries, where they criminalize the purchase but not the selling, has created a lot of issues, which I think we can. Okay, everyone watching this live now, if you're sex workers, please be careful about laws. I feel bad for you if things go wrong. Right? It makes it easy to find the witches to burn. Yeah. And a lot of sex workers don't want their shit out there like that. You know, they don't want, and that's their right. You know, I think that's a human right of theirs. They shouldn't have to go through that. And what was I going to say? The Nordic model. So the Nordic model to me is crazy because if you're criminalizing the purchase of sex, but you're making things more dangerous for the sex worker. You are forcing them to have to go underground because they have to go into more dangerous situations now and to deal with more sketchy people and less safe situations because these men are afraid that they're going to be arrested. Would you happen to know which regions in the U.S. are states trying to decriminalize sex workers? I'd safely assume that the southeastern part of the U.S. would be last to ever agree to this. Nevada is the only state that's legalized it. I would assume the first states that would probably do it, and I don't know what the laws are now, would probably be the West Coast, California, Washington, Oregon, where my ass is from, because we seem to be the most progressive in these policies before everybody else. Like legalizing weed to us was like I can't believe that there's some states that haven't even caught on to that. But here are some ways that the decriminalization model helps, whereas the criminalizing the purchase creates safety concerns. So being able they would be less likely to have to work on the streets if this was decriminalized, and if they didn't have to worry, if their people that were buying it didn't have to worry about getting arrested. They didn't want to have dangerous middlemen. They could screen clients, actually get IDs, give references to other sex workers about who to be around, who not to be around. I would totally get how nobody would want to give their ID if they're doing something that they can be arrested for. They could use a third-party system to help them screen clients. They can now carry around condoms. A meta-analysis of 11 studies with over 12,000 participants found that more repressive policing of sex was associated with higher rates of HIV. I think this was it last year or a couple years ago, where several hundred academics and scientists wrote to the Biden administration showing that empirical data shows that criminalization causes harm and does not prevent human trafficking, and that these harms fall the hardest on marginalized communities. This is also what sex workers say they want themselves. There is a big portion of our population, even on the feminist side, which is really sad, that don't want to listen to the actual sex worker, and they think that, they don't know what they're talking about. They can't consent to their own oppression, blah, blah, blah. But these are the women that are actually doing this, and we should listen to them. This is what they want. They want decriminalization. There's a bunch of sayings: rights, not rescue; not charity, but justice. I really like those. It's not that you need to come in and rest. Like, women have autonomy, and that doesn't mean there are no issues with it. But being pro-sex work doesn't, be anti-trafficking. You can be anti-trafficking and still be pro-sex work. Cops and the cops that are pursuing the arresting sex workers obviously have the same policing biases and prejudices that they have in regular policing. So this falls hardest on women of color who are prostitutes, the LGBTQ community that are sex workers. They are hit the hardest with these kind of policies, that when it's illegal, then more affluent, high-end escorts. Most sex workers carry diseases, right? Or do you make them use condoms? I don't think you get this guy needs to read the room. Shout out to Legal Weed. Sex workers are usually the cleanest because they take the most precautions. Is there ever going to be Uber sex like Uber Eats? I don't know. Hey, sorry, I'm late. No worries. We're talking about the debate on sex work. So I'm going to say these are some of the arguments that anti-sex work feminists make, and feminists who don't want prostitution to be legal. So I think they basically conflate sex work with sex trafficking a lot of the time, which it's not the same. And as we saw in the New Zealand model, trafficking has definitely not increased since it's been decriminalized, and it's actually decreased because, again, people are more comfortable, they have a better relationship with law enforcement, and they're able to report when wrongs are committed to them. When we're talking about decriminalizing sex work, we're not talking about decriminalizing crimes or sex crimes, right? I don't see boobs. Yeah, this isn't the place to see boobs. That's at 8 o'clock Pacific time on my OnlyFans. Sorry to disappoint. This is an intellectual conversation, which you may not be, you may not have the cognitive skills for, so you may leave. So a big argument that they make is that a lot of women don't choose it and are forced into it. Therefore, it can't be ethical and it shouldn't be something that we legalize. A lot of times the women that do it are women in poverty with low socioeconomic status. People of color are overrepresented. A lot of them do deal with past traumas, which I talked about in the beginning. A quote from a really hardcore anti-sex prostitution advocate: if prostitution is a free choice, why are the women with the fewest choices the ones most often doing it? And studies show that poverty is the number one reason that people do go into it. Again, I think this is very much the case with in street prostitution. I don't think this is expanding onto porn and OnlyFans and all of that. Isn't sex worker an adult industry person, right? Sex worker is anybody who sells sex as their profession. So that can be prostitute, like a street prostitute, could be somebody on OnlyFans, could be a porn star, could be a stripper. A lot of things can fall under that umbrella. So are you saying there are so-called feminists that are against sex work? Yes. And I'm talking about some of their arguments now. They really go into the case that money is, it's not, they're saying that if someone doesn't want to have sex with you and they're only having sex with you because you pay them, that is coercion and that can't be consent. They say that some even go as far as to call it a form of rape. If somebody doesn't want to have sex with you, but they're doing so because they need money or because you're giving them money, then you're coercing them into sex. I do not agree with this. You can't consent if you're being paid, and nobody can really consent to their own oppression. That is an argument I saw over and over again, that nobody can consent to their own oppression, and that fuck autonomy, I guess. A lot of negative long-term effects of prostitution, that this just reinforces the abuse of a woman's body for the pleasure of a man. It reinforces the idea that women's bodies can be bought and sold for male pleasure. It's dangerous for the women. Sorry, I'm getting confused I'm getting distracted, not confused. By the comments, that a lot of the people that do resort to sex work are minorities, people of color, the LGBTQ community, and they're facing these consequences. We should just abolish it. They do also, and I agree with this, is that the argument that a lot of people make, well, it's going to happen anyway, and we shouldn't do anything. It's going to be there anyway, so whatever. That's also the case for murder and all other kinds of crimes. So I don't think that's a good argument for people on our side. I'm assuming you're on my side of the debate for decriminalization. Be well, it's going to happen anyway, so we might as well decriminalize it. I think there are much better arguments that we can make. If I do have sex with someone, it would be a love type, not a money type. Okay, thank you for sharing. All right. So the argument for pro-sex work feminists, which is where I fall, is that sex work is labor, it's a job, and it's a woman's choice on whether or not what she wants to do with her body. And it's very paternalistic to tell women that you can't make that decision for yourself. We've determined that it's bad for you. We've determined that you don't know what you're doing and you can't possibly consent to it. So we're going to now step in and save you. I really hate that whole line of thinking. And I do think there's this, in the Nordic model, there's this element of, well, men know what they're doing and that's why they can be in trouble for purchasing sex, but you selling sex, you don't really know what you're doing and it's not your fault. Almost like we're children. We need guardians, and you can't use your sexuality the way you see fit because we think it's bad for you. let women be the final authority on their own sexuality. I think it's just another form of oppression, just like telling women, oh, you have to save sex for marriage and you have to do this. And I was like, oh, well, you can't sell sex. You can't sell. And people say selling your body. I really like I'm selling access to your body. Like, you're not selling your body. You're selling access to your body for some type of gain. And you should have the right to do that. Nobody can come in and tell you you can't do that because I determined that it's going to help you. It's seen as this compassionate gesture to say that, oh, we're not going to blame the women, we're going to blame the men. But I think it's just condescending. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm not sure I know the answer to this question, but do you feel if men had a large population of sex workers that the laws would be the same? What do you mean if men had do you think like if men were made up a bigger portion of sex workers? There are a lot of LGBTQ men that actually are sex workers. Like trans people are really high. They have a big, why can't I talk today? A large percentage, and they're overrepresented in the sex work community. Wife or escort may pay for sex either way, unless you're, I guess. I don't think so. I think it's a thing because it's a way to hold women down more. Are you from Oregon? Jasmine, that's a good egalitarian take. It takes at least two people to be involved in sex work. Yeah, I don't think it doesn't make sense at all. And I remember the woman I was listening to even talk about it. She made a great, it's like saying it, like, let's look at it in abortion. It's like saying, okay, and I always thought this was stupid. Like, we're not going to criminalize the woman for getting an abortion, but we're going to criminalize if she actually goes to the hospital, they can't perform it. A doctor can't perform it. She can't go get the pill. So if she wants to like have an abortion in her room by herself, I guess that's fine. It's like you're making it impossible for the woman to actually get the abortion. Like you're by criminalizing the purchase of sex, you're basically criminalizing her job because she needs those customers in order to do her job, right? Someone needs to purchase sex in order for her to sell it. So if you're gonna criminalize the purchase, you are essentially criminalizing sex work, in my opinion. I don't see what the difference is really, other than making it far more dangerous for her, and making her have to risk a lot more, just like you would do in the abortion example, right? Where people have to do riskier abortions, etc., if they have no other access to it. And it's like, this is the compassionate take. We're not going to criminalize you because you don't know what you're doing. You don't so it's paternalistic and it does nothing except harm everybody involved. And there's this idea that pisses me off that men who purchase sex are all evil, vicious monsters and they all need to be put away and they all have terrible misogynistic views about women. And that's true for some men, but there are also plenty of great normal men who should have the right to purchase sex in a consensual setting, right? Sex work can be terrible and humiliating and degrading in some contexts, and it can also be empowering and really great in other contexts, just like sex, right? Sex is not always great in every context, and sex is not always terrible in every context. There's nuance in sex work, and we can talk about the issues and the ways in which it is harmful while not throwing away the baby with the bathwater, because that just makes it worse for everyone. I think New Zealand is a great example of a lot of the issues that people talk about, like, oh, trafficking and this and crime. If you destigmatize it and you give women access to resources in order to combat these things, it's just better for everybody. All right, let me see what these comments say. I've always been in support of women who have decided to start an OF because, just like you said, they're granting guys access to what they want to see in exchange for financial gain. Make your money. Yep, I think OnlyFans is great. And it's a way that a lot of, it eliminates some of the dangers and risks associated with other forms of sex work. But that doesn't mean that other forms of sex work should be banned or that they shouldn't be allowed. People should be able to make decisions with their own body. And this idea that they couldn't possibly make this decision, or just because they would rather do something else, than this, that therefore this means that they're just so oppressed, and we are just feeding that oppression, and we're allowing them to be abused. They can't consent to their own abuse. I think it's just as sexist as it's crazy that women are the ones saying this, because it's just as sexist as the people who tell us what to do with our bodies. You're doing the same thing. You're telling women what they can and can't do with their bodies because of how you feel. You can speak for yourself, but you do not. No woman has a right to speak for all women, right? Nobody can come tell me that what I'm doing is somehow less fruitful and that I am somehow blah, 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 and I should go back to being a lawyer, even though this makes me happier. No one can come to me and be like, well, you don't know what you're saying, and that's how I feel. I don't give a fuck how you feel. This isn't your life. It's my life. And I feel the same way for these women. Going back to the very real influence of puritanical ideology on the stigmatization of sex work, I see a strong connection between the white colonial male entitlement to women as literal, there's something on my computer, I gotta scratch it to read this, property, and the absolute misogynistic range that toxic men nowadays hold towards independent female. Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because I feel like as sex work has become more ethical through channels like OnlyFans, there's a group of men that have become more and more angry, which we know who they are. Maybe some of them are in this chat, but not most of you aren't. But there is, it was funny because a lot of these men weren't saying shit when like it was something that was more dangerous to women. It was on the streets, etc., or even women in porn they could access for free. But now that women are like, wait a second, no, I want to monetize my sexuality online and I want to sell it. Men are like pissed. Like, you can't do that. You can't prosper off of that. I don't like how much money you're making. You need to go get a real job, and I should be able to watch my porn for free, and you can't be doing this. It's like, why am I so itchy? All right, going back to the I already read that. This fan is making Jasmine, if I remember correctly, you have been an OnlyFans star, right? So you had plenty of experience with sex work and actual sex itself, but how does it feel to be in this type of career? I love it. I like it. It's great for me. I love my job. I love being an OnlyFans creator. Again, though, my experience is just mine, and this isn't to say that this is the case for all sex workers. There's this idea the exception doesn't make the rule, but I don't think I'm as much of an exception as, especially with the explosion of OnlyFans, where like baristas, teachers, librarians, there was just a judge who was fired for being on OnlyFans, a gay judge, and he's cute actually. Like, go get your money, baby. There are all kinds of people who are resorting to this kind of work, and this idea that it's all just drug addicted, abused prostitutes on the street that are giving blowjobs for 2 cents is not the reality, I think, anymore for a lot of sex workers with the internet. Now, that doesn't mean that those things don't still happen, but I feel like a lot of the debate around sex work is still focusing like, oh no, this is the case for sex work now, and sex work can never be empowering, and it can never be good, and nobody could ever actually be happy in it. Well, when you say nobody, that's really easy to disprove, because all you need is one person, and here I am. Men in high status positions want to continue to be in control and do not want to level the playing field by allowing them to have power, so they come up with any law to criminalize everything. Yeah, there is this big debate online right now about criminalizing porn, and not criminalizing, banning porn. And it's gotten more rampant since the onset of OnlyFans, which is really interesting. Oh my God, porn is harming. And I've done past streams on porn, and I did a YouTube video on porn addiction. I want to do a part 2 to that soon. But anytime a society is trying, look at any society in the world. I'm Iranian. I was born here, but my parents were born in Iran, and we all know what's going on there. And in many other parts of the world, anytime a society is trying to maintain the oppression of women and men, having basically keeping them as second-class citizens, the way to do that is to repress their sexuality. We see that in the Middle East. We see that in Iran, where women are not allowed to show their hair. You have to hide yourself. You cannot show your beauty. You cannot make men lust after you, because that's power. And in a society where men have to keep the power over the women, if women are sexually liberated, then that is them having power, because there is almost nothing more powerful in the world than lust and female beauty and attraction. And the way that men are able to maintain that power over women is to repress that and tell them they can't use it. And I think this is done through religion, through culture, through many different mediums, and people's kind of hatred towards sex and sex work and even prostitution, where it's like, oh, you're a prostitute, ew, you sell your body. It's like, why does that irk you? Why does that irk you so much, right? And I urge people who that something about that bothers them, or something about, I see this in my experience all the time. The fact that I was a lawyer and I left my career to do this, and I make more money now and I'm happier, there are a lot of people who think it's great. Like, you can just tell their souls, their hearts are like clear of that envy, that jealousy, that like, you know, it doesn't bother them. But then I see a lot of people who it is like, I just stab them in the heart by this, and they are so angry, and they're like, how dare you make a career shift that has nothing to do with me? So when you are so affected by someone else's decision that doesn't have anything to do with you, I feel like that's a good time to maybe reflect and think of why, right? Especially if you have no argument as to the harm it creates, other than some people say, oh, well, people come up with all kinds of things. Well, you're a sex worker. You quit law to do OnlyFans, and so you're supporting human trafficking because sex workers are trafficked sometimes, or whatever. Or you are preying on men, or you know, X, Y, and Z. It's just, they got to reach in at that point. Careers, great livings for a minute. Yeah, the King of Hunts comment. I need to turn off this fan. It's like so intense. But without it, I get too hot, like last time. Whatever, we're gonna deal with it. But yes, I think that obviously there is a percentage of women who don't want to be doing this, who are coerced into doing it, who are in situations. Like, I do agree with that term, like, especially there's no such thing as a child prostitute. There's such thing as a trafficked child, or a child who is forced into this, or, you know, I don't think children can consent to this kind of work. But to say that no, but I'm fucking 28 years old, I have a law degree, and I want to fucking do this, for anyone to say that I can't, I don't have the autonomy, I just don't know, you know. And I do get those comments too. And Hazardston, I had a conversation about the other day, where men are just like, I'm so sorry. Like, you don't have to do this. And a lot of times they're going to save me. I'm like, don't worry. It's fine. I'm fine. Much better things to worry about than my well-being. I'm doing far better than you, I can assure you. Look at how the prison system is created to target minorities. It's another way that the high-ups don't want minorities to be successful and have power. Yeah, and I do agree with the idea that when you criminalize basically anything, it's going to fall disproportionately, especially if it involves policing on the street. Where do you think this is like do you think like the sex worker who, like, if I, like, for instance, if I was doing in-person in-calls out, whatever they're called, which I don't do, but like, let's say I did, and I was having them come up to my, you know, house in a nice neighborhood, I would not be the person that the police are, like, you know, knocking down and arresting. It obviously does fall harder on impoverished and basically targeted minorities. How are the laws in Oregon and Washington? I'm not sure. I would assume that I don't know if the laws, well, there's one thing, there's what's actually on the books, and then what's being enforced and what's actually happening. Those are sometimes don't coincide with each other. So there are all kinds of, you guys would be surprised. I mean, there are still states that have sodomy laws on the books, but they're not enforced. So what the laws are, if I were to just look up the laws, I wouldn't really give me a picture of what's happening, because I don't actually know how it's being enforced. And I do know that in both of those states right now, I think just policing in general is on the decline. And in some cases, like real crimes, I don't like that. But when it comes to drugs and prostitution, I do believe that police shouldn't be arresting people for those things. There's a Taiwanese NGO that offers free handies for disabled persons. Sex work can be humanitarian. Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that. But yeah, I also was reading statistics on what kind of men purchase sex, and a lot of there's a big portion of men that do it that are disabled and don't have another way to get their needs met. So this idea that I know sex workers get demonized all the time, but almost makes me even more demonized. Am I frozen? All men who purchase sex or even buy OnlyFans. I mean, you guys know this. People are like, oh my God, I hate you. And it's like, again, like I can just speak from my experience. The men that actually come on OnlyFans and they support, they are far more healthy. They are far more normal. They don't have this just burning, angry hatred like Andrew Tate, like dick sucking vibe. They're far more pleasant individuals. So it's just not true. Now, does this mean that there are no men who have bought sex who are terrible people and have bought sex in circumstances where they should have known like this is not consensual, or this person, there's something sketchy going on here, or they've been terrible to the women? Of course, right? But to demonize the whole group, it's like, how are people so simple-minded that they can't understand that if all types of people have sex, then all types of people are also purchasing sex? And there's this stigma that purchasing sex on its own, like people are like, oh my God, I can't believe like doctors and engineers and CEOs like pay for prostitutes, as if that's something that makes something wrong with them and they're immoral and now they're bad people, bad men that we should avoid. Buying sex on its own is not an immoral act or something that people should be ashamed of, or something that if I knew somebody did that, I would be like, oh, you know, we have this image that means that there is some like girl from another country because it's what we see on TV. It's the same thing with human trafficking. Like people think it's like Taken like 90% of the time, when a story like Taken is actually very, very rare. And a lot of times sex traffickers, it involves a lot of grooming. It involves like a lot. It's very different than this idea this snatched off the street. Like, and I see things all the time on the internet, and our brains are very susceptible to fear. And me as a woman, like, and I'm sure Angelica can also attest to this, like we are always on alert. But I see stuff online that's like, oh, if you notice like a napkin by your thing at the gas station, that's like a way that none of it's true, and you can debunk it very quickly. And people are like, yeah, this isn't. But a lot of people will share it like, oh my God, this is how they're just targeting you at your local CVS. And I'm not saying this doesn't happen. I'm not saying not to be aware. But what I mean is, they think this is the majority of human trafficking, or that this is the majority of people who purchase sex are these like just men that are like what is it? Oh my God, why I'm like, this is one of those days. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or Mr. Hyde, whatever that thing, where it's like they have these two personalities, and in the daytime, and there are men like this. I'm not saying there aren't, but that to say that this is it, this is the only type of man that purchases sex, is the man who's like just pretending to be someone in society, and then will go behind closed doors and like grab like a 10-year-old Russian chick and like just like do terrible things to her, and then like go, like this is not the majority at all. And this is why it's important to listen to sex workers, because sex workers will tell you, yes, there are some really bad guys, and these are even the ones that work on the street. This is, I think if you talk to any of us, I mean, Angelica probably can attest to this. This is even in my DMs. There are some really, really ones that you're like, what the, there's even ones in this chat that I'm like, all right, get the fuck out of here. And then there are ones that are really great and really amazing and are wonderful, amazing people. And if you even hear about people who do in-person services, talk about like, there are people who are just lonely. There are people who are very kind. There are people who are very generous. There are people who try to help these women. And sometimes these women are the ones taking advantage of them too. I'm not saying that doesn't happen either. There is a lot of men who are very nervous. They don't like, they're not all these like aggressive guys that are just coming in to purchase women because they want to do crazy shit to them that they can't do in any other setting, which is the way that anti-sex work feminists frame everything. It's like, oh, these men are coming to pay to do things to women that are so aggressive that other women would never consent to it. But because these women just need food in their mouths, and this is not always the case. And the times that is the case, that's terrible. But we can look at that and say, this instance, this occurrence, this this type of sex work or this occurrence within this type of sex work is wrong, and what can we do to prevent this? How can this woman have resources? How can this woman have access to justice? How can we prevent women who don't want to be doing this to be able to do this? How can we provide other economic opportunities for women who would rather be doing something else, without saying that this is the only scenario the sex work occurs in? Is this like just, you know, mafia crazy guy that comes in and like just releases his psychopathic, sociopathic tendencies on this poor woman? It just really doesn't work like that. That's what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm behind on comments now, but I'm trying to catch up. So that's what I'm talking about from my previous comment. I think that because women have gone to the point that they can do good for themselves, more men are being upset because they can't control them. Yeah, I agree. And it is causing this, like, and I think this is a real problem. Like, I don't want you guys to get me wrong. I do talk about how I hate some of the ideology that comes out of this and the way that the narrative that these men are running with. But this problem of lonely, disillusioned men is a real problem. I don't want anyone to feel that way. I don't want people to be upset. I don't want people to be lonely. I don't want people to feel like they don't have access to sex. But to blame and say the problem is now that women have more resources and women have more freedom and opportunity, and now the saying is that women are now with men because they choose to be, not because they need to be. And, you know, now women have more economic freedom, they make their own money, they also have access to more men, right? With these apps, this is a big problem, is that a lot of women, we have a lot more options than we did when we lived in one little village in so-and-so, or one little community and there was like 12 guys available to us. And that does leave some men, like, I guess, the bottom of the pool. But what they're turning that into rage and hatred against women, misogyny, sexism. And the studies do confirm that the more likely that men who feel that their market value in the dating world is lower are more likely to have misogynistic and sexist attitudes. And they're more likely to be very enticed by figures like Andrew Tate, who reiterate that and tell them, like, yeah, you know, this is your right, but you actually have more power than the women if you do X, Y, and Z, and you join my $50 a month university. It's attractive to these kind of women, these kind of men, because they're like, you're giving me the problem that I am like this because I've been wronged and this, but you're still saying that I'm a man and they're women, and that means I'm better, and, you know, such and such. Jasmine, do you feel like you'd still enjoy sex work if you weren't successful? This is a really great question. Would I still enjoy sex work if I wasn't successful? I don't think I would enjoy any job if I didn't feel like I was being compensated for it. So, but I can tell you this, if I was making even less than I was making as a lawyer doing this, I would prefer to do this. So I don't know if that answers your question, but this idea that, a lot of women wouldn't be in sex work if it wasn't for the fact that they were making money. Would anybody be in their job if they weren't making money? Like, what everyone who has a job in here, this idea that, these women, if they weren't making money, they wouldn't have sex with you, or they wouldn't be in there, or they wouldn't be on OnlyFans. Yeah, that's true. But I wouldn't be doing any job if I wasn't making money. Like, if I was making less money doing this, I would still be happier. But the fact that I am successful is obviously a reason I think that I do like this kind of work, because it does provide me with more time, happiness, freedom, and money. But if it was still just giving me more time, happiness, and freedom, I would take a pay cut to do OnlyFans. Now I got a major pay raise, which is great, but that's how. But I would give you that same. I want to know how you feel about sex work. You're the only other, I presume, the only other sex worker in this chat, and I'm really excited because I don't think I've ever had another sex worker in this chat, and I really want to hear your opinion. Yeah, good luck with banning porn. Yeah. And because they can't find a way to profit off it, or because they can't control it in some way, then of course to them it has to be bad. Yeah. And you do see the sentiment with certain kinds of men, either men that really like control and power, or men who don't have control and power. Those are the two types of men that seem to have an issue with it. how dare you be a sex worker when you sell overpriced drugs to dying people for a profit? Please give me a break. Yeah, I know. And this idea that sex work can't be legitimate because it's dangerous. Like, I was reading statistics that in some of these countries, being like so many other jobs is actually more dangerous. Even being in a marriage and like domestic violence and how many women die from that. So it's like, are we going to say don't get married because you could, or don't have a partner that lives with you because you could be subject to this dangerous, you could be subject to domestic violence. Like, you can't tell people, oh, you can't do this job because it's dangerous, right? There are so many manual like even men, like how many men are doing jobs that are extremely dangerous, a lot of heavy manual labor that is affecting their lifespan, affecting their health, etc. And we never stop and think we should ban mining, or we should, well, that one maybe, we should ban this, or we should ban that, because the people that are doing it are putting themselves in a dangerous situation. You know, I think I said this in one of my earlier episodes, but like, you know, it was the famous little viral clip from Mia Khalifa where it's like, well, you're selling your body by doing OnlyFans. And she's like, if you're in the military, you're literally selling your body to the government to be killed whenever they tell you to go. You know, it's not even like your choice like it is on OnlyFans. So you are selling your body, using your body for labor in almost any kind of job, and some jobs more than others. And this idea that you're objectifying it doesn't, it's like something at this point, I think it's just some shit people say, like, oh, you're objectifying your body. Like, you're objectifying your body if you're a basketball player. You're using your body in order to play the sport. You're objectifying your voice as a singer. Like, you objectify anything pretty much when if you're talking about jobs and labor. People just think sex is so special and it's so sacred because of whatever hangups you have about it, or whatever your, you know, celestial woo-woo like guru wizard tells you about it. They not only do you, which you're free to do that and feel that way about your body, but your wizard guru cannot make you implement laws that affect other people, because guess what, we don't all agree with your wizard, you know? Well, Jasmine, I have a deal for you. Now I follow you on Twitter, Twitch, Reddit, TikTok, and Instagram. I would continue on giving comments on all media. If you have someone being hateful, can I help defend you if that happens? You are free to comment what you want. You don't need my permission. When I was in undergrad, I took a feminist theory class, and I remember learning that there's this theory. I'm going to kill this guy. There's this theory that if every single woman on earth would work together, then women would control the world. I ended up getting a B in that class. Pretty bummed I didn't get an A. I agree. Also, something else that's reminding me of is they have found that when women when it's decriminalized and they're able to work together, they're actually able to work together openly, and they're able to, like I said, share references and kind of create more safe avenues for them to be able to pursue their sex work. Even on OnlyFans, I don't know if she looks at the Reddit thread on OnlyFans advice, but there are girls who, if there's like a person that's a scammer or there's someone that's harassing them, they will post the thread, and they'll be like, look out for this user, to warn other women, even in a digital context. It would be so great if sex workers could create a legit website, you know, people that work the streets or any other means that they could be able to warn other workers without having to worry about, oh, me warning somebody is going to be evidence of a crime that I could get in trouble for, you know? Did you move to a different apartment house background? Yeah, I moved into a house, and I am still getting used to the setup. And right now, yeah, I'm this fan. But that was happening at my old place too. I feel like fan on too extreme, fan off not extreme enough. All right, I gotta catch up on these comments. We are about 16 minutes behind. And there's this whole new puritanical value system that these toxic dudes like Tate push, that a woman should only show herself to her husband and save herself for him, and if she doesn't, then she's garbage. But men can sample and play the field, so they're wild oats because they're more valuable to society. Yep, that is the sentiment. I was laughing because there was like some funny shit about him on Twitter earlier, and so I clicked on his Twitter, and he had like a tweet like, women should be protected and cherished, but only a woman who deserves it. Meaning, like, and then he had another one that she posts on Instagram that she doesn't. If she isn't completely submissive to me and me alone, then and feeds my ego. I don't know. There was an interview he did where he said that he doesn't like women who disagree with him on what his favorite, like what the, like he'll be like, what's your favorite car out of his cars? Because, you know, he just wants to know that we're shooting his cars, honestly. This might not even happen. But he's like, if I show you my 22 cars and I say that one's my favorite, and a woman says, well, actually, that one's my favorite, I don't like that. And men don't like that. You need to agree with us. Like, if I say that's my favorite, then that has to be your favorite. I'm like, okay, this guy is an absolute fucking absolute lunatic. Twitch, yeah, quit being a creep. This is a happy place for good discussion. Yeah, can we ban Twitch 123? I don't think he's contributing anything to the conversation other than yeah, I don't think he's in his right mind. All right. So Angelica is responding to someone. I believe women are this close to controlling the world, and that's part of the reason a lot of men are losing their minds on a terrifying level. Yeah, and one of the debates, I saw a couple of debates online about this topic, try to prepare for the podcast, and there was one, I think it was at Cambridge University, and there was a girl who was basically making this point, like, and she's the one who said, we're not selling our bodies, we're selling access to our bodies. We want to monetize our sexuality, and that for some reason really pisses people off. Like, it really pisses people off that women have something powerful and they can use it for their own gain. Okay. It's like everything in this world, there's always going to be a small group of rotten apples that put a bad name on something, and people highlight them and make them the spokesperson of what will happen if you allow this to happen. This is in reference to your statement that all men are bad. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of the problems we have in the sex work world, it's like they're used as evidence to keep sex work illegal, but it's like maybe some of those problems arise because it's like, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, maybe it's like saying, oh, look at all these people arrested for drugs, so we shouldn't legalize drugs. Like, no, maybe if we legalize drugs, then maybe you see what I'm saying? Like, oh, these people are getting killed in the streets. Like, prostitution is so dangerous. We can't decriminalize it or legalize it because look how dangerous it is. It's like, maybe it's that dangerous because it's illegal. Like, maybe you know, I don't know. All right, as far as I'm concerned, everyone is on the same playing field until they aren't. Nope. Yep. Doing good, pal. And I had to tell, okay, let's get that one. When deciding where to source your sex work, be sure to consider supporting local independent businesses, such as mine, such as Angelica's. It's also interesting that women on OnlyFans are somehow now blamed for glorifying sex work and ignoring human trafficking, when OnlyFans is literally a way that you can combat something like that, because everybody on there has to be verified. We have to, if we bring anyone else, they have to be verified, sign a consent form. We are taxed. Like, the IRS knows it's, you know what I mean? And this is not to say that maybe there aren't situations where somebody is convincing their girlfriend or somebody, like, start an OnlyFans and maybe they wouldn't want to do it, but that is much better than a lot of these same guys that are watching shit on Pornhub or Xhamster, any of these places for free. You are far more likely to be watching somebody traffic. You are far more likely to be watching somebody underage. You are far more likely to watch content that girl no longer wants on there, that she can't get removed because Pornhub owns the content, or Pornhub doesn't respond to removal requests a lot of the time. You are far more likely to be consuming revenge porn and all types of shit than you would on OnlyFans. Yet you're the same person who's going to make the argument that us creators on OnlyFans are somehow glorifying human trafficking. Make it make sense. I'm a legitimate psychic and I specialize in finding missing women. Most of the horrific taken type situations are actually perpetrated. Yes, by a woman's boyfriend, coworker, friend, etc. Not some random foreign dude calling Liam Neeson on. Exactly. That's what I mean. A lot of times, this is somebody that the person knows. This is somebody that unfortunately has abuse in the past, doesn't know how to identify red flags. And these groomers, these are the real groomers, okay? Not random trans people, but these are the real groomers, people who see this and they realize that these women are vulnerable and they come in and they use the lover boy method, for instance, like Andrew Tate. That is actually a way that that's I think in the majority of cases, that's how this stuff happens. More especially in a country like the United States, if you're living in like a generally safe area, even kidnappings, even child kidnappings, a lot of times those are even people that very random stranger attacks. While they do happen, they're very rare when it comes to kidnapping, when it comes to assault, like rape and sexual assault. A lot of times it's somebody that or etc. It's not that you're walking home with your groceries and get attacked. I'm not saying that can't happen, that you shouldn't be careful, but it's not the majority. And same thing with people, like she's saying, missing or taken or trafficked. So a lot of times those are what we should be really focusing on, is protecting children, making sure children have access to resources, making sure our system does a better job, and making sure homes are safe for children, providing parents with better resources on parenting, providing people help with their substance abuse issues, because a lot of times in those kind of homes there is also substance abuse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as opposed to writing mean comments to OnlyFans stars. Like, you're not helping human trafficking by yelling at us. I can attest to my own anecdotal experience of taking lower paying jobs that ensured my health and happiness for more than higher paying, joyless professions. But yeah, I need to be making at least enough to live. Yeah, this is a good point. So that's why I said, like, if I was making like not enough to live on OnlyFans, I would be a lawyer, because I need to live and I need my necessities. But my income as a lawyer, especially after I got licensed, was like decent enough to make a living. But I would have still done this for a little bit less, because this provides me with the experience, like a day-to-day better life, for sure. But again, I want to point out that my experience and my success on OnlyFans is not the norm. Like, people have this idea that like people are making, and some people are making exorbitant amounts of money, but even like Black China, there was that rumor she made like $240 million. And then she's like, no, I made $2 million in 2 years, which is still a lot of money. But I think there's this idea that everyone that just hops on OnlyFans is making like crazy money. It's not true. But there are some people that are very, very blessed and lucky and fortunate. Like I have been, even though I did work hard, I think there's just luck that comes into it. Just like any other content creation. Like if you look at some of the biggest YouTubers, there are probably smaller YouTubers that have like 12 views on their videos that are great content creators that just haven't had that luck or whatever it is that makes people succeed in these areas, where whether it's entertainment, etc. Like sometimes it's just something, Does accounting work as a dangerous job? I do consider myself to be a daredevil for being an accountant. Any job can be dangerous in its own way. Thousand, guess what? Yes, but soldiers, it is for the nation too. So that's the argument. Like, oh, you were throwing yourself on the line for the nation. Really? When was the last war where that happened? Not in recent history. In recent history, a lot of the wars that we fought were not very heroic, right? We didn't go into Iraq to just, right? Like a lot of times, I don't blame the soldiers for this, but, the people that were really harmed were innocent people there, and we didn't need that protection, as we now know. So to say that we're creating harm to society, whereas people who blow up children in other countries based on orders of the government are just doing something really heroic. And I'm not saying this is what the soldiers mean to do, or that every situation of people going, I think if you look at our history, there have been very, very heroic soldiers, but to say that this is just a blanket statement, like they are just all good, all good for society and we are all bad, is again simplistic. War, my moderator says, war is rarely, if ever, altruistic. I agree, but I'm trying to give the most charitable take here too, because I don't want to get into my personal views because they might be a little extreme or controversial, but I think we can all agree that at least the statement that every time soldiers go into war and they're acting with such bravery and they're just protected, that's not the case. And how shitty is that people have to go? Because I think a lot of times these soldiers are taken advantage of. You're barely paid, like Mia Khalifa said, you're barely paid shit too. And you're risking your life because Donald Trump has a bad day and decides to start a war, whoever, to fight over fake oil. Like, I would much rather me sit here, show my titties online. All right. Treacherously! You made it, buddy. Oh, I wish you were here earlier. Oh, we talked about a lot earlier. I would have loved your perspective on. You have to watch back and message me. All right. Let's see. Where am I? What's one of the top 5 killers in the U.S.? Alcohol, but that's not banned. Why? Because they tax it. They profit off of it. They know the hazards of it, but it's never going to be stopped. It's a way of control. Yeah. There's so many things that are worse for, and I've made this argument before. How many of us yell and demonize people who work at or bar owners or people who sell alcohol to people or sell alcohol to alcoholics? They're not getting the hate messages I get, I'm just gonna say, for taking advantage of these sick, twisted men who, God forbid, like sex. And they want to see sex because we're human beings and all of us have a sex drive. And somehow I've said this before, it's like a restaurant taking advantage of your desire to eat is the equivalent of OnlyFans girls taking advantage of your horniness. Like, no one has a gun to your head, but we have a service that we provide and you're free to either use it or not. I don't understand. It depends on how people view / value the work that is done. People don't realize the benefit of sex work in many ways. People who self-identify as incels may find release of aggression from sex work because they don't feel like they no longer have to be involuntary celibate. Yeah, I wonder if sex work was decriminalized or legalized, if it would combat some of these issues that maybe these men feel. Because if you actually hear from real sex workers, they talk about how a lot of times these men are looking for intimacy. And a lot of times, sometimes these sex workers do build relationships with these men in different capacities. In person, I've even built relationships online with these men. Like, again, I don't create any kind of unreasonable expectation or boundary, but I've created actually like friendships with some of you in here that I'm so happy I met you in my capacity as a sex worker. It's not always so sexual either. Like, I have a very platonic relationship with a lot of the men in here, and then they'll come watch my live after and they'll get off too. But let me know if you guys are feeling exploited. I'm new on the scene and still working out where / how sex work fits into my bigger purpose, but I'm having fun and I'm finding it empowering and inspiring in a lot of ways. I'm in a similar boat as you. I didn't pass the bar law, but I have a 4-year degree from a great university. I'm a successful psychic. I have the family, the house, etc. But sex work is something I want to explore. Here we have 2 examples of women who chose to be here, who apparently can't consent to our own oppression, but we're going to try. We're just so, that's the argument that they make. These women just are so entrenched in the patriarchy that they think they're making this choice, but they can't be making this choice because we, the all-knowing arbiters of truth, are going to make the choice for them. Like, I just find it so condescending. And it's like one thing when it comes from men, but when it comes from women, it's just shut the fuck up. Imagine if sex work were more prominent during the time, maybe Elliot Rodgers wouldn't have become as bad as he was. maybe. I don't think it would solve the problem as a whole, but treacherously, I'm glad you're here. I can't wait to get to your comments. Your whole vibe is very positive and explanatory and free thinking. I'm very much of a skeptic, atheist, humanist these days, but had my time as a tarot reader and crystal healer, so I am no hater of the intuitive arts. I'll be checking out your page for sure. Yeah, Hazardson is a great guy, person to have on your page, so you guys should check her out. Legalize prostitution. Treacherously, you missed our conversation about how the issues that legalizing brings up in like Nevada is a good example, where you need to be registered, like have a license, register with the sheriff, go through, lose a lot of your rights to privacy, etc., and how it creates like a two-tiered system where women who aren't registered, haven't gone through this, get arrested more, and they're not able to report crimes, etc. So we over here, aka me, I don't know about everyone else, I am team decriminalization over legalization for that reason. But before I did my research, I would have agreed with you about legalizing. I have a question. I don't know if you already have the answer. What do you think about guys who are paying suits? Okay, I think I just answered that, but I think that they are, for the most part, not, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but the ones that I get messages from on my OnlyFans seem like the coolest, dopest, most educated people. Definitely when I compare, if I look at my OnlyFans DMs versus my Instagram DMs versus my Reddit DMs, like I can tell you OnlyFans tops the charts at positive, healthy, normal people. A lot of these, and it's not these lonely losers. I have so many couples that subscribe to my OnlyFans together. I have so many men who find me through their wives. I have men who are like, me and my wife watch your videos together and have sex. Like CEOs, bankers, lawyers, etc. Like it's only these weird, lonely losers in their basement who have taken on this narrative that people who subscribe to an OnlyFans must be even more of a loser than me. So at least I'm not doing that. When the truth is, baby, these men are far more successful than you. And these men are far better and happier and healthier people than you. So you sitting there and trying to at least hold on to this, well, Andrew Tate says that they're simps, so I'm going to like at least not be a simp. And I used to get messages sometimes where it's like, I've looked for her content for 3 hours and I can't find the sex tape and anywhere, but I refuse to pay for an OnlyFans. Like you spent 3 hours looking for something that you could have paid $6 for, and you think like somehow you came out on top. Like I do not get it. But that's how I feel. Edit, not advocating for minors to engage in sex work or with sex workers, but rather have a more informed understanding of it that they can act on once they're 18 and older should they choose to. Yes. I think we're some of the best people ever. It's the process of finding someone psychically sounds interesting. I believe you're a good friend of Jasmine. She's my friend, but she subscribed to my OnlyFans and asked me some questions about my experience, and now she's here, which I'm really happy about, because I don't, like on a topic about sex work, I would love to have another sex worker in here, and I was really happy to be able to put up her experience earlier in this. Hello, I wrote an article about you on some news site recently. I am a new, I have a question. You make $70K a month. My fans is 7 years. That means you have a. No, the article kind of got things wrong. But my OnlyFans is $7 US, and I have more than 10,000 fans right now. So the article got a few things wrong, including the fact that I go live every day. They said I do daily live streams, and that one was the thing that bothered me, because I don't go live every day, and a lot of people subscribed and were like, oh, the article said you went live every day. I'm like, I don't know where the fuck they got that. They also said I worked 10 hours a day before. I did not work 10 hours a day before. I actually probably work 10 hours a day now, but I didn't work 10 hours a day before. Also, you don't make all your money from subscriptions. So you get tips, you get messages. So your math, when you're like looking at how much money people make, you don't want to just go off subscriptions, because people make money in different ways. It's all about marketing consistency with your content. That's how the person with 12 views is going to be able to grow their channel. Yes. And I did not have any social media before this. It's almost been 2 years since I started this. It'll be 2 years in a couple months. And I have not missed a single, I post on Reddit every other day. I have not missed one day, except when I was banned for a little bit. But I have not in all that time missed a day of posting on Reddit. And I think like there was a time where I used to tell myself, oh, it's just because you look a certain way. I'm not saying my looks don't help. I'm definitely not saying that. I got big ass natural titties, which is very rare. And it's like, everyone's like, you, like, how do you have such big, I'm like, I don't know, but I know that that's an anomaly and that helps me. But at the same time, I'm not going to take away from myself that I did work and I was consistent enough to get here. My consistency on some other platforms right now, like YouTube, etc., I wish I was better at, and I'm going to work on it. But I didn't just, oh, take a break because I feel like it. I didn't do stuff like that. It's all about marketing and consistency. Okay, as an active duty military member, I say that I'm no shape or form give my body to die for this nation. All I do it because it's a good job with good pay and benefits. So let's say a sex worker said that. Sex worker said, I would in no form give my body to men, or I wouldn't have sex with this guy, but I do it because I get the money. Somehow now it's like, oh my God, she's being abused 100%. Like, we need to stop this. How can you support this being legal? And this idea that people can sell other things just for money that they wouldn't do otherwise, but sex, if they're doing it just for money, means that they are just so entrenched in their own oppression, doesn't make sense. Now, that doesn't mean that I want women have no other option. But one, there are women who have other options that still choose this. And two, the solution is to give those women more options, not to take away this option. Obviously, the invasion of Iraq was a big mistake. Yes. America makes a lot of big mistakes when it comes to intervening in other countries' affairs. Let's just say that. All right. Angelica, you can use various methods. I use remote viewing. I never can say this word. Telepathy. Sorry, English is my second language. General energy reading. I also work directly with law enforcement private investigators. Oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to admit I am skeptical on all this, but do you? And if you're working with law enforcement and private investigators, like, I'm going to say if somebody I knew close to me that was missing or something, I would, and I don't even believe in this, I would be like, girl, just whatever, even if there's 0.0% chance this works, why not? The only things I put myself at risk is I almost fell from the mountains close to have a tree fall on me, and I have overhauled a lot of metal on my arms and back, but I'm still alive. Glad you're alive. Thank you, Angelica. I'm so happy you're here. I really think legalizing sex work would help a lot of incel type guys. Psychology and sex work shouldn't be ignored. I agree. I don't think that would solve the problem, but I do think to make it easily accessible, because I've like browsed on some of these forums, and there are incels who aren't even like angry or terrible people yet, and they're just like, hey, how do I even knew he's a family friend of mine who's like a legit incel, and this word incel is so attributed, which it's attributed in my head to people who subscribe to the ideology of women being XYZ whatever. He doesn't even like, I actually told him about incels. He's like, what's an incel? He didn't even know. And I'm like, it's someone who's involuntary celibate. He's like, oh, then I'm an incel. Like, yeah, but he was not privy to any of this rhetoric or the narrative, but he was my age and he had never had sex, and he's such a kind, loving person. He has friends, and this is the thing with incels, is it's not just, a lot of the times the ones who become angry and psychotic also have other issues. Like, they don't have a lot of friends, they have sometimes there's a lot of overlap between some conditions like autism or something that makes them socially, like a lot of social anxiety or something. Like, this guy didn't really have any of that. He had friends, he had a good family, but he was just really awkward with women, and he wasn't physically attractive, and he had no game. And it was like our goal through high school and college to get him laid, and like nobody would do it. So he was finally like, I'm just going to go to this brothel in Nevada. And he did, and it was fine. And I'm like, why shouldn't he be able to do that? You know? decriminalization is the way, not so much legalization. Yes, I agree. I used to be like, oh, legalizing is better. But after, I think practically speaking right now, at least when it pertains to in-person sex work, obviously what I do online is legalized. But in-person sex work, I think practically speaking right now, legalizing creates that two-tier system where certain sex workers who don't have the means or the ability to check off all the boxes are going to get, there's going to be a lot more harm directed towards them. There's a stigma of sex work. Oh, hold on. Oh, how would you guys feel about a private Discord group that we could all have? Because I really like a lot of you guys in here, and we could just share stuff throughout the week, or I could ask you guys about topics that you want to discuss. I will be honest, I won't probably have a lot of time to be in there because I'm just so busy, but I really like, I feel like a lot of you guys are really cool, and maybe you guys just want to be like in a group chat with each other too. Let me know if you guys like that idea. There's a stigma of sex work among the men who would most benefit mentally. They see it as attractive guys don't have to pay, but if sex work were more understood, we recognize that if it can provide services that are not just the sex part and that people don't necessarily get. Yes. And this really ties in, like, people, men who would benefit the most, like I said, it's like the men who are like, the men who think that like I said, the men who think that people who subscribe to OnlyFans are losers are usually the losers themselves, and they're trying to convince themselves that they're not that much of a loser when the men who actually subscribe to OnlyFans are normal. And I will even say the attractive guys don't have to pay. Do you guys know the fucking like mountains I've had to make? I made attractive men climb. They got to take me. You guys got to pay $6.99 to see my titties. They got to take me to dinner. They got to like, you know, be on my ass for about like, because I don't, you know, it takes me a while, whatever. And they have to do they've spent a lot more money than that, and a lot more time and a lot more energy. And I still half the time, more than half the time, they don't get anything out of it. So this idea that attractive men don't have to, this idea that the Chad just comes and pounds his chest and we're all like, woohoo, that's not really true. In a way, all men pay for sex. There's that guy earlier that said you're either paying for a sex worker or you're paying for your wife or whoever. Yeah, this idea that, you know, they may not have to. And this, we all, like I just said, a lot of very wealthy, famous people also pay for prostitutes. So again, this is like a narrative that these unattractive guys tell themselves, like, well, if I was attractive, I wouldn't have to do this and blah, blah, blah. When attractive guys are sitting there doing the most too for pussy. As I'll leave the legal structure to you, so I'll say decriminalize too. Thank you, Treasure. So you can watch back if you want to watch this once it's over and see some of the arguments that I have seen come about from the Nevada model that I'm like, okay, I see the point, because I would have said the same thing before I knew more. Decriminalizing sex work first is a must, but then legalizing it, absolutely. I think if we can find a way to legalize it without having the issues that we're seeing in Nevada, I think it could be good. But right now, it seems to push a lot of sex workers underground who haven't put themselves on the book, the witch hunt book or whatever, Scarlet Letter. Psychic activity. Okay, I'm gonna skip the psychic stuff because I have 4 minutes. I don't think my first minute sent. I got a thing saying it was being reviewed how to set up by discussing how the realities of sex work should be taught in sex ed, just how people advocate for masturbation. Yeah, I think I 100% agree with that. That's why you're here, first time watching finally. Yay! Glad you're here. My first girlfriend had huge knockers and they're definitely rare. Very rare. Ironically, it was a woman who first coined the term. So yeah, I heard it was a woman who, and she wasn't trying to be like rude. Okay, got a few minutes. Jasmine, do you start running fans in 5 minutes? I do. That's what I'm trying to get through. Yeah, my current girlfriend is too hot for me. That's what we do. You see what intelligence does? Like, intelligence does so much for even women like me. Okay. Great idea on the Discord. Sounds fun. Okay. We'll see. I'd be down for that. I'd be down. Okay. Looks like a few of you would be down. So I will get my moderator on it and then I'll talk about it next week. Well, speaking of the law, I remember reading an article about OnlyFans agencies where they hire people from relatively poor countries to respond. Yes. I talked about this not last week, I think, but the week before. And pretending, after reading the article, I watched a YouTube video where you said you did not do that because you do not consider ethical. Disregarding ethics, however, is doing something like that legal, or would it be considered a case of, I was thinking that it wouldn't be a case of that, because when you sign up to someone's OnlyFans, it's not like, that isn't part of like the thing that like you are 100% speaking to that person. You are able to chat with the creator, but the creator is able to have a team just like any other, creator is able to have people that speak to others on behalf of them. So it's not against OnlyFans terms of policy. And if it's not against OnlyFans terms of policy and you sign up for OnlyFans accepting their terms of policy, it's not technically fraud. I would consider it not fraud like in the legal sense, but I would consider it fraud like in, what is that word? It's the legal word, where it's basically in practical terms, I think you are scamming people personally. Now that's different than I may, because my load is just getting too much. If people are just asking me for videos and people are just asking me for like bundles and stuff, like that's what you're DMing me about, like, hey, can I get this video? I feel like I could have an assistant send you that video. But if you're saying, hey, how are you, how's your day, and I'm like, oh, my day was good, but it's not me, I don't think that's fair if you're on a platform that you pay to talk to me on. And even on my other platforms, I like, I'm like, we only answer questions about Snapchat or something. I don't have people come in and pretend to be me and manipulate people's emotions in order to sell them things. I don't think that's right. See you next one. I'll see you at your next Twitch episode. Okay. It is time for the Fun Live. So if you're not already there, hop on over. So doing that is legal under US law then. Well, anytime you're on a platform, it's not like this is what people don't get about the First Amendment either. People are like, oh, why can Twitter ban me for this? It's my First Amendment right. Well, no, when you're on Twitter, you are agreeing to their terms of use and their terms of service. So even though in the real world, you can go out and say the N-word, I would argue maybe that goes under fighting words under Chaplinsky. At the time when Chaplinsky was decided, the fighting words were goddamn racketeer, which today I'm not sure how that would be. And fighting words are one of those areas that isn't usually like enforced. So I don't know. But that law is still technically good law. Anyways, but if I start a platform and I ban that word, it's not your free speech right to go on my platform where you agreed to the terms of service, and then it's different than law. Okay. All right. Anyways, I am gonna go get freaky deaky on my OF now. So if you guys want to join me there, go jasminejafar.com. And I know a lot of you are already subscribed, so let me get over there. See you soon.